Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? I'm not feeling well. I just thought I was tired yesterday, but I just woke up from a nap from coming home and just collapsing. But I promised a show tonight, and I deliver when I promise something. So along the bottom, and oh, thank you. Oh, I got a super chat. That's the first time that's ever happened. Thank you so much. So what a fantastic segue. All super chats matter, but thank you. I truly, truly appreciate it. And along the bottom, I guess that's a good way it goes. Hurry up the grifting and just get to the topic. Along the bottom is my Patreon. If you enjoy my content, patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And just because I am due to do a sponsorship, we will get through this. So right there, right in front of me, you can see it better. Asteros.com. God, I keep meaning to move that up to a different section on my screen. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you can see it much better right there. So Asteros.com, cybersecurity services. If you go to Asteros.com/free, they will give your business or online organization a free surface penetration audit. Ooh la la. But actually, it's to see where your cybersecurity might be weak. They also do training and classes for your volunteers or employees to make sure, one of the easiest ways that not good hackers, these guys are white hat hackers, but the not good hackers get into your system is by tricking. is by human errors, by tricking your staff. So they will also perform training so that they don't fall for scams. That's asteros.com/free, ASTEROS.com. All right, let's get right to the topic. So, and thank you for watching on Facebook, a Libertarian 2A. It really helps the algorithm. It makes a big difference to watch on Facebook or on Twitch. Okay, and I think I'm gonna start doing these LNC updates on Twitch. Everyone keeps telling me I really need to develop Twitch, that it's really easy to get monetized on Twitch. We'll see. I'm old school. I'm like 2 years away from boomer generation, so I'm like used to YouTube. We got quite a bit to cover. Boy, all right. Let's get right to it, shall we? So this is our LNC update. Going to talk about what happened since our last LNC update, which was last week. And there will not be one next Friday. I normally do these on Friday. There probably will be one, though, a week from Monday, because that will be right after the in-person LNC meeting. Though I'll be a little jet lagged because I'm coming home on Monday, but I'll probably do a show to let you guys know what happened at the meeting. And though a lot of you will probably be watching at least some of the stream, I don't expect people to be watching all weekend. Though I used to do that before I was on the LNC. I would listen all weekend. Back then, they didn't video stream it, but they did do it over a podcasting platform called Libercaster. But that's a blast from the past, those of you who remember Libercaster. All right, so let's talk about, there's 3 meetings set now. I haven't put out the notice for the meeting next Monday in 3 days. It will be an executive committee meeting. Let's talk about that one first, because I haven't put the notice out and I'll forget if I don't talk about it right away. So on Monday, there is an executive committee meeting, but it's going to be all an executive session, which is secret session, because we're going to be talking about potential new staff, and personnel issues do qualify for executive session. There's going to be no decisions made. So there'll be no votes to come into public session for. So we're going to convene in executive session. We probably have to convene in public session, do a motion to go into executive session, and then have the meeting. But in any case, it's not something that anyone will want to attend, because you can't really. It's all going to be in secret session. But again, no decisions will be made. Any decisions probably that will be made at the Alexandria, Virginia meeting. As you guys know, we had some staff members resign, so we are in the process of working on hiring new staff members, and they have to be approved by the LNC. So that's what's going on. And hello, Matt Shooter. Libertarian 2A, I will not be going to the Yale Revolution because I can't get time off right now. I unfortunately even had to turn down an invitation to do some parliamentary work out of state because it just would require time off. And I can't do that right now because I'm off next weekend. I'm off Friday and Monday. Okay, so the Monday executive session, that's not really anything to talk about. You just know that we're going to be talking about replacing staff. So those of you who have worried that you haven't really heard much about that, and you know that Tyler's last week, I think, is this week. I think July 31st is his last day. So he'll be at the LNC meeting, but the next day, we do not have an executive director. And we had also lost our comms director, and there's a few other staff members. And we're working on that. Okay. So tomorrow at 3 Eastern, so that's 1 Mountain. I always have to keep reminding myself that because the sphericity of the earth is always a problem for me. I would be a perfect flat earther if I could buy that crap, because I hate time zones. But so tomorrow, 3 Eastern, 1 Mountain, we are having a meeting. It is a public meeting, but there will be no motions. It again is another discussion meeting, but it will be public. If any motions need to be made coming out of this meeting, they will be made in Alexandria. If any. I don't know if any will end up needing to be made. But the subject of the meeting is the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. You guys know that I've been talking about the Libertarian Party of New Mexico since February, since before I was on the LNC, because there's been a lot of issues. So, China has just one time zone. Does it? Isn't it China? Okay, I am the most geographically ignorant person you will ever meet. It took me 3 years of being in Colorado before I could point out Colorado on a map. I get lost in my own neighborhood. I'm just not good with maps and time zones and land. It's just not my thing. I literally do get lost in my own neighborhood. I'm not saying that facetiously. I've been walking the dog and got lost and had to call Wayne to come find me in my own neighborhood. Yes, that happens. It's part of my autism. I don't have good awareness. Like, even when I lived in Florida, I was going to the same church for a couple years, and I still had to use the GPS to get there. It's bad. It's really bad. A lot of people don't know. So I probably should start being a little bit more public about this, because it will avoid some awkward situations. Though over my life, I've developed a lot of tricks and coping skills, but I have partial face blindness. I don't recognize people right away. And it's not that I don't care about people. I like people. I remember names. And as long as I can tie it to some kind of situation, but even people I know very well, sometimes it takes me a few minutes to recognize them. It's a known disorder. It often is connected with autism. And part of it is because autistic people don't look people in the eye. A lot of times you don't know we're not looking you in the eye, but we just don't. It's well known. When I'm looking at somebody, they might think I'm looking at them in the eye, but I'm concentrating on a different area, like a very small area of their face. And just over time, it's a synapse thing. It's a mental thing. So if you ever meet me and I don't recognize you right away, please don't take it personally. I'm the same way with coworkers that I've worked with for years. Like, I have to draw like little it's bad. It's really embarrassing, and it's bad. I don't even know why I got to that. Probably because I'm going to be meeting a lot of people in Alexandria that I've met before, and they're going to be like, oh, you know, some people think I'm like really arrogant because she doesn't remember. It's a disorder. A lot of people have it, and it's not something that's talked about very much. Okay, where was I at? So what's wrong with New Mexico? It's like there's something up with Gilbert Grape. There's a lot wrong right now, going on wrong with New Mexico. I've done so many hours on it that it's going to be hard to recap it. But what we're talking about specifically tomorrow, and the reason we're talking about it, because normally the LNC, as a general rule, stays out of crap that's going on with the affiliates. There are some exceptions, like Delaware was an exception. Massachusetts was an exception. Whether or not New Mexico falls into one of those exceptions of us doing something, we'll find out tomorrow, I guess, when we hear everything and we see what the mood of the LNC is. But nothing prohibits us from talking about a situation. And the reason why we're even talking about it is because we have gotten numerous complaints from members, including National Party members to whom we have a duty. And what the complaints have been about is they, in their constitution and bylaws, it allows their central committee to call, or their executive committee, I can't remember which one. The executive committee is just like the officers, and the central committee is bigger. That allows one of their boards to call special conventions to nominate candidates or other quote-unquote urgent matters. Now, I know if JJ's listening, he disagrees with me that urgent is so subjective it can mean anything. I don't agree. Otherwise, the Constitution and bylaws provision would just say they could call a special convention for anything that they want. JJ and I disagree there. I do think that there has to be a reasonable interpretation of urgent. It is not so subjective that it is whatever the executive committee says it is. Of course, it's ultimately up to the New Mexico members to determine if their justification is sufficient. But I do think they have to make a case for it being urgent. I do. Hey, Maya, I don't know if I've ever seen you in any of my streams. Maya's on Facebook if you guys on YouTube can't see her comments. Adorable person from Washington State. Okay. So they're holding a constitutional convention or they held one, allegedly. We're going to say a constitutional convention. I'll say why I'm putting it in scare quotes. And, there were certain amendments they wanted to make. And one of them I do actually think is justifiably urgent in any reasonable definition. And that is that they discovered a flaw in their bylaws that can artificially limit, in a bad way, the population of eligible voting delegates. And I do think that was a urgent thing that needed to be fixed. The other things they tried to throw in the pot, I don't think are urgent, and neither does any New Mexico member that I've talked to. Yes, God, Nathan always reminds me I'm such a terrible YouTuber. Please subscribe. Please go to YouTube and subscribe. It really helps my stats. And also, if you go to YouTube and like the video, even if you dislike it, it helps my stats. Of course, obviously my ego would prefer that you like it, but even haters boost my algorithm. So like when people dislike, YouTube doesn't publicly show dislikes anymore because they become woke. So nobody sees it except for me, and I don't care. There Wayne goes with the sink. You all can probably hear that. Wayne! Stop with the water! I need a broom. I'm in the basement for those of you who don't watch very often. Okay, now he stopped. I wanted to just chitter-chatter over that while that noise was going on. I forgot exactly where I was. So no New Mexico member agrees it's urgent. So they had some other things that they wanted to pass, including like ditching Roberts, which is a huge mistake for any state party, whether or not you like Roberts. If you don't teach your members Roberts, they will be incompetent at the national convention. Simple as that. Even if you hate Roberts, it's in your best interest to use it for your boards. Now, I think most people who hate Roberts hate it irrationally. There's several reasons why I think some people hate it for the wrong reasons. One, they're too lazy to learn it, and you don't need to learn the whole thing. All you need to get is Robert's Rules in Brief, and that is what 99% of the people need. That's it. You can read it in an hour and a half. It's short. Parliamentarians and people really into it need to know the whole book. You don't. Believe me, you don't. Do I have a copy of Robert's in Brief here? I think I do. I have Mike's copy. I think. Yeah. This is Robert's in Brief. Look, it's short. It's short, and the print is like fairly like it's not tiny print. Like this, you can learn it quickly. So there's really no excuse to say, it's a 600-page book or whatever it is. This is all you need to know, and it's without the tinted pages. How many pages is this? I know it's under 200. Okay, before the index. It's like 180 pages. It's simple. That's all you need to know, most people. Even most state chairs, that's all they need. As long as they know how to look up something a little bit more complex in the bigger book on the rare occasion that they need to, or they have a parliamentarian. Okay, there's usually somebody in your state party who's geeky enough to be your parliamentarian. Okay, So that's excuse number one, which is invalid. Excuse number two is that they've been abused. There are the priests of Roberts who lord their superior knowledge. In our party, there has been a culture of abuse around Roberts, and I understand why people have a bad taste in their mouth. I was abused. That's why I learned it, so I would never be abused again. But a lot of people get abused, and instead of learning it in order to get even, they just try to ditch it for something dumb, like the Democratic Rules of Order, which do not work for political parties. They just don't. Or, like a county did in Colorado, something called Martha's Rules of Order, whoever the hell Martha is. So another thing they wanted to do was ditch Roberts. That is not urgent. And no possible scenario is that urgent. Not only is it not in the best interest of any state party, but that's up for the members to decide. I'm just telling you my opinion. It's also not urgent. What they ended up doing, though it's all null and void, which I'll explain in a minute, is ditching Roberts for something that no other state party uses and nobody that I know in the LP is proficient with, which is the American Institute of Parliamentarian Standard Code, AIPSC. Way to make sure nobody knows what they're doing. And it's not like the chair there knows it. He doesn't know it. But thank you. I guess I have to thank Chris Lucchini of New Mexico, because he's now put the fire under my ass to get my certification from the American Institute of Parliamentarians, so at least one person in the party knows the AIPSC in case it ever comes up. It's not going to come up with, well, whatever. We'll get into it more. So that was another of their changes. They have a recording of this convention. We'll get into that. I don't know exactly what was passed because the recording cut out. The public recording cut out before any of the crucial votes. So none of the members of New Mexico, even except for the ones that were in that meeting, which is a whole other issue, even know what was allegedly passed. I was told in an email, but I have no proof of this, that they also threw off a board member. Like, they removed a board member. That wasn't in any of the various quote-unquote notices that were put out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on the screen. I think I did this in a show already, but I've revised it a little bit since then. I'm going to pull up my summary of what I wrote to the LNC of all the parliamentary issues with what happened in New Mexico. And I'm also going to read the chair's email, the national chair's email, in which she set the New Mexico special meeting. Who's better at Roberts, Aaron Starr or me? I don't know. I don't think, and this doesn't always matter, I don't think Aaron has any certifications in Roberts, but me having a certification doesn't make me better. There are plenty of people who don't have certifications that are better than me. Aaron's certainly been doing it longer. And Aaron is one of the people that abused me with Roberts. Aaron is one of the people I can say thank you for putting me on this path. I don't think he intended to abuse me though, but Aaron's gotten a lot better. Like, he was great last convention. I have to give it up to Aaron. He was great last convention. But in 2016, he was kind of a jerk about Roberts and was one of the people that when I was on the 2018 bylaws committee, that's when I got abused. And I was like, me and Kim Ruff were just like, no, never again. But he isn't the primary abuser. It was M. Carling, who is a PRP. And Alicia Matson was there, was a PRP. Alicia Matson, I think, comes off as lording that knowledge over people, but she really doesn't. She just sometimes can be a little hard to get to know. But she doesn't intend it that way at all, in my opinion. I think people think I have a crush on Alicia Matson because I respect her so much, because I do. Alicia Matson is one of the most scarily competent people in this party. I think she totally screwed up on the Judicial Committee and let her emotions get away with her in my decision. But other than that, we all screw up. But other than that, you will hardly ever hear me say anything negative about Alicia Matson. She's one of the people because she's another secretary. She's super good that I have the utmost respect for.
Objection, speculative.
That's just for Dan Lutz. Okay. All right, we're going to pull up my opinion. You know where I should, but I can't keep comments up when I have, you know, a PDF on the screen, and I have to find it. I should never say I have organized streams because I never have anything ready ahead of time. Let me find the opinion, because I did just revise it. I have the old one on this computer, but I've got to find the new one. Okay. Notice a special meeting. Proposed. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Version 2. Okay, let me download this, and I will put it up on the screen. But again, we will not be able to have comments up when I do this. No, computer, I do not wish to update my operating system in the middle of a stream. Thank you for asking, though. Okay, and as I said, this is going to be a longer stream because we've got a lot to cover today. Why did this come up twice? Oh, I see. Okay. I did bring this up before, but we're gonna cover it again. Let me expand that, and let's see if we can get it up on the screen. We're not going to go over all the exhibits, though. This is on the LNC list, so you can go download it and view it for yourself. Let me close some windows out here. And now let's share my screen. Okay, let's start right here. I have to turn off the chat. Let me do that. And let's pull it up. You guys should be seeing it now. Nope, that's not what we want to look at. We don't want to look at the New Mexico Constitution. Hold on, where'd it go? Here we go. Alrighty. So this is the memo, excuse me, I wrote to the LNC. I call it a memo or a summary and not like a parliamentary opinion, even though it contains opinions, because I am not the parliamentarian for the National Libertarian Party. Richard Brown is. So I'm writing in my capacity as LNC secretary who just, hold on, I want to put my camera up on the screen too, because just looking at a thing without looking at a face, hey, there's my background. I don't want that camera. I want my other camera. But before we get started, somebody had mentioned in another screen that they loved this old desk. This is an old secretary's desk that was made in 1898, I think. There's a little date right here. And what I mean by secretary's desk, if you notice, the desk is up here and then it goes down. This is where a typewriter would go. And this whole thing flips up when you're done typing. It is the coolest thing, and it weighs like 200 pounds. It's solid wood. It's got these great, everything. This is just a wonderful desk that I got for free on Facebook Marketplace. Okay, let me change my, view. Okay, here we go. And I'll move that, make it smaller, and now we will pull back up the opinion. Okay, much better. So you guys can actually look at a face rather than just seeing me lecture or hearing me lecture. All right, again, there's a reason I call it a summary or a memo, is because I am not retained by the National Party as their parliamentarian. Okay, we're going to go through this. Not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the pertinent parts so you can see that there actually is something very serious going on in New Mexico. I've been sent screenshots from, some of the hater groups because I don't belong to any of them. I have most of those people blocked, and some of the really just foundationless things they are saying, as if we're just sticking our nose in something that's not serious, that we have no business even talking about. And I hope at least when I go through this, even if you end up thinking that the LNC should just leave it alone, that you'll at least see there is there. Even if you ultimately come to the conclusion that you don't think the LNC can or should do anything, I think everyone will realize this is not a tempest in a teapot. Okay? Alrighty. I hate when I have to read the screen. I should always have something on like a little iPad or something here, because my eyes are right at the stage where if I put on my readers, it's blurry, and if I take off my readers, it's blurry. The screen is right at the position that there's just not a good place for me to read it. So if you see me squinting, that's why. Getting old when you already have bad eyes sucks. Okay, to the Libertarian National Committee, and I originally wrote it July 18th, but I updated it July 21st. And the major change to it, if you read the earlier one, is I wanted to append the opinion of the parliamentarian that the Libertarian Party of New Mexico retained, because I found that that was kind of a red herring in some discussions, because people have been like, oh, it's just a battle of the parliamentarians. They have a parliamentarian on their side, and you've got people who are because, by the way, attached to this also is an opinion on some issues of Richard Brown. Richard Brown is mostly in concurrence with my opinion. So now you've got two parliamentarians who pretty much agree on these issues. He might differ on some things. I don't know if he does. So I don't want to say he agrees with me entirely, but I know he agrees with me substantially. And yes, the Libertarian Party of New Mexico hired a very competent parliamentarian as well, but it is not dueling parliamentarians here. The parliamentarian, Valerie Alhoff, which just because that last name kind of doesn't roll off the tongue for me, I'll just say Valerie. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. It's just easier for me to say. Valerie was only retained to give an opinion on one issue. And we, both Richard and I, agree with Valerie on the one issue she was retained to give an opinion on. So no, it's not dueling parliamentarians. We agree with the one issue that she was retained for. You'll see as I go through this memo, I disagree with the constitutional article she used to base her opinion on, but that's a distinction without a difference, because there's another constitutional provision that I think is clear. So her ultimate opinion is correct, even if I disagree with how she got there. And reasonable people can disagree on that. All right, so here's the memo. I do a paragraph with a disclosure that there is an LPNM member, Tyler Askin, who I used to represent on a different issue. It's a related issue, but it's a different issue. Actually, it's not even a related issue. It's a related issue conceptually, that it's about an illegal convention held by the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. But that issue got resolved. So it's like a dead issue. The only way it even comes into play on this one is to show that the Libertarian Party of New Mexico has now had 4 consecutive illegal conventions. It's up to the members there. I can just tell you my opinion that perhaps, okay, once is a mistake, twice is carelessness, 3 and 4 times is incompetence, in my opinion. Do with that what you will. I would think no differently if we had a state chair in Colorado who called for illegal conventions. And we've called an illegal convention here in Colorado before, but we didn't go through with it. Once I brought up, and it was a board I didn't even agree with. It was a board that I thought wasn't a very good board in Colorado. But when I brought up that they didn't give proper notice, they canceled the convention. and they just had a gathering that no official business could be done at. Now, they weren't very happy with me for pointing that out, but they didn't go through with an illegal convention. And that was a terrible board here that at least did the right thing when it came to that. It was during the whole COVID thing. They missed the notice deadline. And here, they only missed it by, I think, 2 days. I'm such a hard ass that I did the same thing with my own party here. We missed our notice, I objected, and they canceled the convention. And they weren't at all happy with me. But I was right. They thought I was being too picky. But to me, notice is sacrosanct. You don't nod and wink to that. And the funny thing is, if I had ignored it, the board that I didn't care for, half of them would have been replaced, because it was an election convention where there were going to be board elections. But I am such a stickler for notice that I saddled myself with a board I didn't like for another 6 or 7 months, because I wasn't going to allow a convention that didn't follow our bylaws requirements for notice to go forward. It was against my self-interest to object, but I did. So there was, and I did a video on this, an illegal constitutional convention called on January 6th. It went forward. I represented Tyler Askin in that, wrote several letters on his behalf, which are attached to this summary memo. Mr. Chair Lucchini eventually conceded that it was an illegitimate convention and voided it. So it's a non-issue. Everyone has conceded that it was an illegal convention. And then I have some appendices to this summary. The 2 letters I wrote for Mr. Askin to the board of LPNM, multiple screenshots from the Wayback Machine of the Libertarian Party of New Mexico website to help prove my assertions about their lack of notice. Now, the problem with screenshots from the Wayback Machine is the screenshots themselves don't have the dates on them. So you kind of have to just go, I'm saying it's a screenshot from this date. But if you go to the Wayback Machine yourself and go to the date I claim it is, you'll see that it is a screenshot from that date. You can go to the Wayback Machine yourself and see that. Then a copy of the LPNM Constitution and Bylaws adopted March 27th, 2021. That's the Constitution and Bylaws that they were operating on leading up to this illegal convention on July 12th. And because the convention is illegal, this is still, I believe, their Constitution and Bylaws, so they would disagree. This is going to be the heart and soul of this whole thing. Richard Brown's research summary he did on state law. The changes that were noticed for the illegal convention, and then the opinion of Valerie. So those are the appendices that you can go read. Here's my summary conclusion. The too long didn't read. The LPNM Constitutional Convention held July 12th, 2022 is null and void, and the LPNM Constitution and Bylaws adopted March 27th, 2021 are still in full force and effect for the following reasons. Number 1, the Constitution was the convention, was not properly noticed as per the LPNM Constitution and Bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order. Number 2, electronic conventions are not authorized by the New Mexico Constitution and Bylaws. And then I put a caveat to see the footnote. Footnote is too tiny for me to read on the screen, but it basically says New Mexico has been a paranoid piece of shit state when it comes to COVID. The governor, not the people. Obviously, it's the governor, it's the government. The government always is a piece of shit in every state. But the governor of New Mexico has issued emergency order after emergency order for years. And there was an emergency order overriding any bylaws to the contrary, and allowing electronic members meetings. A convention is a member meeting. It's very, very unclear from the New Mexico website whether that order has been renewed. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it expired in June, and this convention was in July. But I do have that caveat, because perhaps they just haven't uploaded it. But the burden of proof to show that the bylaws have been overridden is on the board of the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. Now, do note that the nonprofit law, and they are organized as a nonprofit corporation, allows for electronic meetings of the board. But this isn't a board meeting, this is a members meeting. And then number 3, members were improperly excluded from voting as a result of the prior March 5th, 2022 annual convention being null and void due to lack of proper notice. You notice, pun intended, a theme here that the Libertarian Party of New Mexico doesn't properly notice their conventions, and they're all void because of that. So the July 12th convention is void, but that's predicated on the March 5th convention also being void. So both of those things need to be proven. One depends upon the other. Though, actually, no, they really don't. Let me backtrack. The July convention will be void for notice issues, but this is just another issue it is void for. And I said related issues. There are serious issues about the composition of and validity of the membership of the New Mexico Central Committee due to the illegality of the March 5th, 2022 convention. Further, it's noted that although there is ostensibly an internal judicial council, they call it a council, not a committee. Check this out. The committee is comprised only of the board. Yeah, that's really impartial when you have a complaint against the board. It's called into existence and session by the board. It's not a standing committee. Not by a petition of members. So it's certainly not designed to be some kind of independent and disinterested review panel. It's the cops policing themselves, basically. And further, due to the illegitimacy of the March 5th convention, it's questionable whether there are any valid appointments that could be made to that committee, because it's really questionable as to whether they have a valid central committee right now. Their executive committee is valid because officers aren't elected. They weren't elected at the illegitimate March 5th convention. They were elected the year before. But the rest of the central committee was elected in March. Says New Mexico Chair Chris Lucchini. He also mentioned a previously unknown April convention. This was never noticed anywhere, which he also conceded was invalid because it wasn't noticed properly. So we have a January convention and an April convention that Chris Lucchini concedes he screwed up. We have a March convention and a July convention that are in dispute. Following along now? So I said, thus it's possible that New Mexico has now had 4 consecutive defective conventions. Their parliamentary authority is Roberts. And one thing I want to note that I need to note here. Their constitution and bylaws uses a phrase, caucus member. Don't think of it like an internal party caucus, like the Mises Caucus, Radical Caucus, Prague Caucus, whatever. The way they use the term caucus member, and I think has something to do with state law in New Mexico, is the same way that other state parties will say dues-paying state party member. So when we say caucus member here, that's what they're referring to, a dues-paying state party member. Okay. And then I put a suggestion that this should be reviewed by the party parliamentarian, because I am not the party parliamentarian. And then for each of those 3 points that I did the summary on, then I do an extended argument supporting why I came to that conclusion. This is the part that some people, they may read only up to that line I just put in the first column there. That's the too long didn't read. But now here's all the support for those summary conclusions. So I say the July 12th Constitutional Convention was not properly noticed. Now, I'm not going to read through all this. I'm going to give you the highlights. I quote their constitution. And according to their constitution, there are at least 2 requirements for proper notice, and one of those requirements has multiple subparts underneath it. First, they have to notify each caucus member. There's no time frame given for when they have to give that notice. And there's also not saying it's only caucus members that are entitled to vote at the convention. It just says each caucus member. So that would even include brand new ones that were not entitled to vote, but they are caucus members. That was not done. The second requirement for notice is publication to the New Mexico website within 30 days of any convention. And that publication on the website has to include where the convention will publicly take place, because New Mexico laws require that member meetings be public. And since they were trying to claim this is an online convention, that would have to contain reasonable details about how to publicly access this convention. And notice of this has to be on the website for 30 days. We'll get into what their notice said. And the second part that has to be on the website is like a disclaimer statement. The information that all caucus members must be in good standing, and good standing is defined as paying the full yearly dues amount, which is frickin' $72 a year. Now, if you don't know much about New Mexico in general is not one of the more wealthy states in the Union. New Mexico is a poorer state. That's not to say there isn't rich people in New Mexico. Chris Lucchini is one of those rich people in New Mexico. But $72 a year, and it goes down to $60 if you're a National Party member. But that is the highest dues anywhere in the country that I have seen. Typical state party dues are $20 or $25 a year. Some states don't have any dues at all, like Colorado. But whatever. Tyler, you are misunderstanding. What I am reading is not state laws. It's their state party bylaws. So, no, he doesn't rock. Right now, I'm not basing anything except for the electronic portion on state laws. Everything else is their bylaws. So what he's disregarded is his own bylaws. I know y'all can't see the comments. Tyler was saying if he's just disregarding state law, then he's being a good libertarian, basically. But we're not talking about state law here. I'm sorry if that was at all unclear. So those are the requirements. All right. Now, there are caucus members who claim they never received notice. This has pretty much been conceded by Lucchini, that he only sent notice to those who were qualified to vote under his definition of qualified to vote, which we will see is wrong. But that's not what their bylaws say. The bylaws say notice has to go to each caucus member, not all caucus, not only caucus members that were entitled to vote. But he also didn't send it to ones that were entitled to vote. Hello, Julian. Now, those members would need to attest to that, and then the burden would be upon the New Mexico board to give their proof of notice through whatever. Since it doesn't say how to give them notice, it would be their customary method. However, state law does say the way notice has to be given for members meeting, and it's by whatever means that they registered with the state party, which would be generally by email. So easy enough. So now let's get to what was put on the website. There was a notice put on the website more than 30 days prior to the convention. Good, because he never did that for the January convention, the March convention, or this previously unheard of April convention. But he did manage to fulfill the 30-day requirement. Good, good, okay? And I have screenshots of that. But the notice didn't contain the language about, which JJ posted in chat for those of you on YouTube, that says The notice shall include the information that all caucus members must be in good standing 30 days prior to the convention to allow the secretary to validate the qualifications of the delegates. And JJ says he would take it to mean that the email notice would have to be in 30 days in advance. I tend to agree with JJ, but I'm trying to interpret things to be most in favor of Mr. Lucchini, believe it or not. I'm trying to make sure that every grounds I have here is rock solid and unambiguous. But though I do agree with JJ that I think all of the notice has to be 30 days. I'm interpreting this in the most generous way possible to the leadership of the Libertarian Party of New Mexico. Okay. I'm trying to find where I left here. So it didn't contain the information that Tyler can't prove a negative. Tyler asked, did anyone miss the convention because they were unaware it was happening? I can't know that because you can't prove a negative. If they were unaware it was happening, they probably are unaware that they missed it. They're probably unaware of all of this. Can't prove a negative. Likely, yes. But there are things we can prove that we'll get into. Okay, let's continue. Also, this notice, besides not containing the language it needed to contain, it didn't contain the public place where the meeting would take place. For an electronic meeting, that again would be how to access, like the Zoom link or the Google Meet link. It said email the state board to get the link. That's not what their bylaws say. The bylaws say that information has to be on the website because it's a public meeting. It doesn't say public only to members of the party. Public to anyone. Public is public. It's not public to party members. So their notice on the website needed to contain a link where members of the public could watch it. Okay. And if you listen to the convention, because they did post the recording in an act of tremendous unself-awareness, the executive committee members during the convention verbally knew there was an issue. And I don't think this is possible to do, but Chris said in the middle of the convention that the link changed mid-convention. I don't think that's possible. I think that's him being just electronically maybe not as savvy, but that's what he said. So, whatever. I don't know if that happened, but he said that happened. Okay, further. A special convention would fall under the rules for special meetings in Roberts because there's nothing else in the bylaws that would supersede it. Special meetings are limited to the items listed in the notice of meeting. You can't consider other items. There were no items listed on the website that they were going to consider. It just said Constitutional Convention. So you understood they were going to be amending the Constitution, but you need more specific notice than that. You have to know exactly what. That wasn't posted on the website. Allegedly, that was sent to caucus members that Mr. Lucchini thought were qualified to vote. But it certainly wasn't sent to them 30 days ahead of time. It was sent to them at most around 2 weeks ahead of time, and to some members a few days ahead of time. And it's so hard to tell because their video recording cut out before the votes, but at least according to some people who were at the convention electronically, there were things considered and voted upon which were never noticed to caucus members. I don't know if that's true or not. I can just tell you what members have said. and that others may have been amended beyond the scope of notice. This isn't exactly a Roberts term, and maybe JJ can give me the proper terminology, but I call it amending over the notice rather than amending under the notice. And the example that's given in Roberts is, say you give a notice of a bylaw amendment that you're going to raise the dues to $50. You can amend that to raise the dues just to $40. You can't amend it to raise the dues to $60. Amending it to $60 would be amending over the notice. It's going above the notice. It's more onerous than the notice. But you can make it lesser. So I just call it amending over the notice, amending under the notice. JJ probably knows better outside the scope of notice. But you can do lesser than. That's why I say over and under. Most people understand what I'm saying. But I know it's my own language. Okay. And these amendments have not yet been published to the website. I haven't looked in a couple days. We'll look at the end of this discussion. Remember, this can be a long video because we still have the Alexandria meeting stuff to go over. Okay, but this is more, I'm not going to say it's more important, but it's more immediate because there's a meeting on this tomorrow. All right, next page. Electronic conventions are not authorized by their constitution and bylaws. We already kind of went over that, and that the law might allow for it. It's inconclusive. However, it says if there is such a state law overriding the limitation of the bylaws, the electronic special convention is still void because it wasn't a deliberative assembly. A deliberative assembly under Roberts means there's opportunity for simultaneous oral, oral communication with the participants. And if you listen to the recording, 90% of the time, and I think probably even more than 90%, all you can hear is Chris Lucchini. So, for example, when he brought up one of the amendments and asked if there was objection, there was, and then he allowed people to speak to their objection, no one could hear the debate. Only Chris could hear the debate. No one else could hear the debate. That's not a deliberative assembly. That's not debate. So for the majority of the convention, you just review it and you can see that was the case. You do not have to take my word for it. Plus the audio was terrible. I had to signal boost it. I put it into a video editing program and boosted the audio and re-uploaded the convention. The buffering during the convention was so bad it was unwatchable. And everyone was complaining about it in the chat, in the chat, because it was a Google Meet, so it was simulcast like to a YouTube thing where there was a YouTube chat. I uploaded a better audio of the convention to the historical committee YouTube channel, because this is a historical event. So if you want to go listen to it, you can. And I screen recorded it. I didn't download it. I screen recorded it because I wanted you to see the YouTube chat, because that was really the only way people had to communicate that other members could see, was through chat. So you can see all of those comments in the recording. So I said even if electronic meetings were allowed, this was not a valid participatory meeting. And the convention chair was well aware of this fact, as well as the issues of legality. Okay, and the reason why we know this is because in the middle of the convention, and this will become important in section number 3, but I'm just going to bring it up now. In the middle of the convention, the executive committee hastily convened an executive session over the phone. But Chris did not mute his microphone. So he had a hot mic this entire time while they were in secret session, so everyone could hear at least Chris's part of the discussion. And his part of the discussion included that he was well aware there were problems with with this convention, because the footnote is so tiny, I got to move closer to my screen and put my glasses on. So for instance, during the hot mic, it said, and I give timestamps, include statements from Mr. Lucchini, including, there are a bunch of people who are qualified who can't get in. We are absolutely fucked if we pass this, and we are so fucked. So Mr. Lucchini was well aware that he should have just stopped and given up. It wasn't working out. And then after that executive session, on a live mic, the rest of the executive committee proceeded to make derogatory comments about members in the YouTube chat. Okay, you can do that, I guess. I mean, it's indecorous, but, you know, it doesn't invalidate a convention, but it does prove that they were well aware of the complaints of members in the YouTube chat. They can't say they were not watching the YouTube chat because they referenced those comments in their derogatory comments. And since this was in a Google Meet, you can infer from their comments that the chat in the actual convention itself was shut off. And that makes the fact that the audio was entirely one-sided even more egregious, because in the official electronic meeting, people couldn't even talk to each other and chat. They had to go over to the YouTube channel and do it in chat. So the YouTube chat included people who were not in the official convention itself, but wanted to be, and were complaining that they were shut out of a convention that they were entitled to be voting delegates at. All right, now number two is the one that might not be true. Well, it's still true because it wasn't a valid deliberative. The fact that electronic, I should actually add 4 points. But I'm not going to revise this opinion again. It's not an opinion because I'm not their parliamentarian. You know what I mean. The summary. Because even if electronic conventions were allowed under state law, it wasn't a valid electronic convention. So actually, I undersold the case here. In the explanation, I didn't. But in my summary conclusions, I actually should have, instead of 4 points, I should have had a 0.3A. 2A. Maybe I will revise it. Maybe I'll do a supplement. I don't want to reissue this long ass opinion again, because you don't need to know why. There's a technical reason where I'm doing the minutes ahead of time, and I'd have to extract out 50 something pages and individually insert them again, which takes me an hour, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to issue a supplement. All right. So now point number 3. Members were improperly excluded from voting as a result of the prior March 5th, 2022 annual convention being null and void due to lack of proper notice and a large enough number to make a difference in the results. So, in order to void a convention because people were prevented from voting, the number of people that were prevented from voting have to be in a large enough number that, in theory, if they all voted against the measure that passed, they would have made a difference, or vice versa, a thing that didn't pass. In this case, we are talking about things that passed. And this avoids every single large meeting being voided, because, listen, when you're dealing with really large meetings of thousands of people, there's always one person who could say probably that they were improperly excluded. Let me give you an example. The 2020 Electronic National Convention. Starchild, for whatever reason, refused to get on the Zoom meeting and wanted to call in. But all of the votes were done through electronic voting. He wanted to call in his vote, and he was the only one out of 1,000 and something people. He could make the argument that he was prevented from voting, but it wasn't in a number to make a difference. Okay? So I hope that gave you guys some education. So it says, first sentence, I agree with Richard Brown and Valerie Alhoff. And as you can see, Valerie is a PRP, and she's also a certified parliamentarian, which means she has the American Institute of Parliamentarians certification. So Valerie's a big dog. you know, she's highly qualified. That there's a requirement that a caucus member must be fully paid in yearly dues within 30 days of any convention. So, what that means in this case, July 12th, everyone had to be fully paid with their $72 or $60 by June 12th. I know some caucus members in New Mexico disagree with us three on this, but I do think their bylaws are clear. Richard Brown agrees with me that there is a 30-day seasoning requirement. You have to have been a fully yearly dues paid caucus member within 30 days. However, there's another boundary. So that's the last day that you could be fully paid, but their bylaws has a really weird provision, and this is the only thing that I actually think was legitimately urgent to fix, is you had to pay it not only by with the last day of 30 days before, you had to pay it within the period of time of the adjournment of the last convention. Normally they only have yearly conventions, so it wouldn't be a problem. So it would have to be within the 12 months prior to the next, to the convention you're wanting to attend. So the March 5th, 2022 convention, you had to have been paid by February 5th, 22, and you had to pay it from the end of their 2021 convention, which was March 27th. So you would have had to have paid it between March 27th, 2021 and February 5th, 2022. Hopefully that was clear. However, when you start calling special conventions, you narrow that window. So if the March 5th, 2022 convention was valid, it wasn't, but if it was, that means the people would have had to have paid their $72 between March 5th, 2022 and June 12th, 2022. That's the flaw in their bylaws. That is something that needs to be fixed. So if their March convention was valid, they could hold a constitutional convention with a very small slice of their membership voting on it. And that was Chris Lucchini's position, that the March convention was valid. Therefore, the only people who were entitled to vote at this July 12th constitutional convention, and he kept saying, this is a hill I'll die on. We have to fix this problem we have with our Constitution or I'll resign, allegedly. Well, if you really thought that was a problem, Chris, this doesn't become an issue unless you hold a special convention too soon after another convention. So why, if you thought this was such a big problem, why did you have a special convention in July to fix it when you were artificially limiting the amount of people who could vote? Why didn't you wait? Why didn't you wait till later in the years and send out an email going, listen, we're going to have a constitutional convention later this year. Due to a defect in our bylaws, everyone will have had to have paid their dues after March 5th. Get your dues in so you can vote at this very important constitutional convention. But he didn't do this because there were other things they wanted to get passed, and he wanted a limited amount. That obviously is me speculating on motives. I can't prove that, but one of these things is not like the other, being super concerned that there would be an artificial, unreasonably restricted pool of voting delegates does not jibe with having a convention that has like a month and a half's worth of people. Okay? He could have had it later in the year because it wasn't going to be an issue again until next year. And it wouldn't even be an issue next year if they didn't have a special convention because it would be 12 months. So, methinks the gentleman doth protest too much. Okay. Now, even though I agree, and Richard agrees, and Valerie agrees, that caucus members had to be paid 30 days prior to the convention, Chris Lucchini was telling people they didn't. and was collecting dues up through a couple days of the convention and telling them if you pay your $72 by such and such date, you'll be entitled to vote. Okay, that just means he's not a very competent chair, but him saying that cannot override the bylaws. People may have relied upon it. Their reliance on that, the only recourse they have is to vote in a new chair or try to remove him as chair before election time. It can't override the bylaws. I know some people are mad at me for saying that, but it's just the truth. Okay. All right. So it was not until July 11th, the day before the scheduled convention, that Chris Lucchini finally informed caucus members that he was wrong and that they would have to have been paid 30 days prior. And the only reason he did that is because he got threatened to be sued by some New Mexico members, and that's when he hired the professional parliamentarian. And here is, I put on the screen in the second column the bylaws that I do think say that you had to have been paid 30 days prior. And this is the bylaw they are trying to fix, because it says the dues must be paid between the close of the prior convention and 30 days prior to the upcoming convention. Okay. So, whoops. Go back. This is the part I'm going to read in full, because this is the meat of it. Thus, Chair Chris Lucchini is claiming that the only caucus members eligible to vote were those who paid between the close of the 2022 annual convention on March 5th, 2022 and June 12th, 2022. He is correct about the latter date and wrong about the former, due to the fact that the March 5th, 2022 annual convention was null and void due to improper notice, which will be detailed below with evidence. Since Chair Lucchini has conceded that the prior attempt at a constitutional convention on January 6, 2022 was invalid due to improper notice, the last ostensibly valid convention held by the LPNM was on March 27, 2021. Thus, any caucus members with their dues paid between June 12, 2021, because the provision is 12 months before, and June 12, 2022, would have been eligible to vote. But only those who were paid between March 5th, 2022 and June 12th, 2022 were permitted to attend and vote by Chair Lucchini. This is a violation of the basic rights of memberships to vote and constitute a continuing breach of the Constitution and bylaws, invalidating the July 12th, 2022 special convention. The number of affected members has been reported to be up to 40, though the membership numbers would need to be confirmed with the governing board. It seems apparent that it is well in excess of the 1/3 needed to affect the results of any vote to change the Constitution and bylaws. Because we are aware of enough people complaining and saying they were eligible, that is more than the 1/3 to affect the results, because there was one vote in the recorded meeting, and he did like a roll call vote, and at most there were 20 people at that convention. Now, the March 5th, 2022 annual convention was invalid for many of the same reasons that the July 12th special convention was invalid, with the additional issue of that convention was not put on the New Mexico website within 30 days of the scheduled date. So in support of this, I do screenshots from the Wayback Machine that you can go verify yourself. The 30 days before March 5th was February 3rd. So I show you on the Wayback Machine on February 7th and February 9th, there was no notice. But happily, also, I did a live video going over the entire New Mexico website on February 9th. So there's video evidence that there was no notice. February 9th is 6 days past the notice requirement. And in that video, I showed there was no notice. I give a link to that video and the timestamp where I get into that, because it was an hour into the video. I think the first day that notice was posted was February 14th, which is 11 days after the deadline to post notice. And then I say I'll be glad to answer any questions by the LNC. The rest is the appendices. All right, let's go back to my full screen here. So I hope with this that even if you come to the conclusion, and let me put the chat back up here, that the LNC can't or shouldn't do anything about this, at least you now see there are issues. We aren't just making shit up to try to get in somebody's face. There's a lot of issues going on here. Whether this is malicious or just incompetence, I can tell you my personal opinion, but that's me guessing at motives. I told you objectively what the facts are. Now, I want to tell you something really interesting. A former LNC member, my biggest fan, this at least now, Beth Vast, has said, I gave no objective evidence for why there are issues with New Mexico. Now, I just went over with you all of that. Do you think I gave no objective evidence? I gave my subjective opinion once verbally in this video. Nothing in that summary was my subjective opinion. I backed it all up with evidence and citations. I don't know what her problem is, because she's not a stupid woman. If she was stupid, I would think she just didn't understand what I wrote, but she's not. So that only leads to certain conclusions. All right, that's it for New Mexico. I have no idea what the mood of the LNC is. I probably am a terrible politician, quote unquote. I hate that word, so I'm not a politician. This should prove it, but let's just say I am. I'm now on my 6th year on the LNC. Some people will disagree with what I'm going to say now. I don't want to say ever, but rarely, and I didn't in this case, I do not go and have private discussions with LNC members to gauge what people are thinking. And when I put a motion out on the LNC list, I do not call up people to rally support before the vote. Why? Because I think members should get to see all of the debate. And if I'm making private conversations and convincing people over the phone, the members do not get to witness that. I'm not going to say I've never done that, but I've probably done that twice in 6 years. Some people will say that is not wise. You should always, rally your support before the vote. I don't do that. Never have. That's just not my style. So I put that memo out on the LNC list. I have no idea what the rest of the LNC thinks. I briefly discussed it with Angela, not even to find out what her opinion is just that she was getting the complaints and I was getting the complaints. These complaints were forwarded to the entire LNC, but they were originally addressed to Angela and me for obvious reasons. Members now know that I will take up their cause if they're being abused. And obviously, Angela, because she's the chair of the party. And I think so I have no idea what the LNC thinks about this. We're discussing it tomorrow. Now, I want to tell you something honestly. And I'm also going to tell you my feelings right now, which could change tomorrow. I think we have more than enough cause to disaffiliate New Hampshire. Oh my God. Forgive me, New Hampshire. New Mexico. Every time I say new, because of everything that's happened with New Hampshire, even when I try to say New York in a conversation, New Hampshire just comes out. New Mexico. I think there's more than enough cause to disaffiliate New Mexico. However, I have no, as I sit right now, LNC members could convince me tomorrow if that's where their head's at. I have no desire to do that. None. I just want this to be fixed. That's where I'm at. I do think we have more than enough cause, and I'm not inclined to do it. Okay? And I think there's enough people on the LNC that would not want to do that it would never get the 3/4 vote. So, what we actually can do outside of disaffiliation, we'll see. The only thing I know we can do for sure that everyone would agree upon, not agree upon doing it, but would agree we could do it, is disaffiliation. There isn't a 3/4 vote for that. If I'm going to tell you honestly right now, my opinion, I don't know because I don't make phone calls ahead of time. That's the only thing that's crystal clear that we can do. I actually think we can do more than that, but I'll make my argument for that at the LNC meeting tomorrow. So if you want to hear it, come tomorrow. I don't know whether anyone else will agree with me because, again, I didn't try to rally support ahead of time. Now, let's talk about Alexandria. God, I've got a headache. I don't feel well. All right. And now we are, when did I start this? We're in an hour and a half into this, and we just talked about New Mexico. Now we're going to talk about Alexandria. And all super chats matter. Tip your bartender. Okay. I need to pull up something. The agenda is not out yet, but I've been working with the chair. Ooh, and something new just came out in the LNC list. June end of month financial reports. Hold on, let me pull that up. I'm going to just read out loud Todd Hagopian. I haven't digested this at all. I'm just reading it. It just came across my screen. To the LNC business list from Todd, I have attached the monthly financial reports along with a summary below. Cash position. We exited April with a negative 34,000 cash reserve. We ended May with a strong cash reserve of positive 206,000. We ended June in an even stronger position with a cash reserve of 241,000. Revenue strength. We had our best non-convention revenue month of the year, logging $180,000 in support and revenue. This was fueled by an uptick in new donors in June, reversing the previous trend. We continue to put ourselves in a position to have a shot at our best non-presidential revenue year in over 20 years. Take that, haters. Expense analysis, we've kept costs down. Party debt, the $50,000 credit line balance has been paid down to zero as expected. Summary, June was the best donation month since December. Recurring donations jumped 7%. Loan was paid off, expenses under control, cash reserve grew stronger. That's good news. Okay, I'll digest that more later. That literally just came across my screen. All right, I'm going to go over what I expect to be on the Alexandria agenda. I can't put this on the screen because this is still work product between the chair and myself working on the proposed agenda. I can tell you something that's been silly pants, not this term, but past terms, is the chair, well, per our policy manual, the chair is ultimately responsible for putting out the agenda. Cool. But in the past chairs, Whitney for the tiny bit of a time that I worked with her, Joe Bishop Henchman, Nick Sarwark never solicited the assistance of the secretary in preparing the agenda. That is insane. Angela is different. She's different in a lot of ways. But I prepared the agenda with her. Obviously, the final agenda is her call. But I've been doing the administrative end of it. There's no reason for the chair, who should be doing the things that are going to bring the party the most value for their highest level. They shouldn't be doing administrative background work like typing out agendas. That should be the secretary. So I've done that for Angela, as I should have been asked to do that for Nick. And whatever. Angela is a good chair. She's treating her officers in their roles that they're supposed to have. Okay. There'll be all the typical stuff that the policy manual requires we do an in-person meeting, all the committee reports, blah, blah, blah. Not going to go over that. Scott Horton's going to be there. There will be an article put out on the LP site about this, so this isn't secret. He's going to be our lunch speaker on Saturday, and he's also going to be at the donor event on Saturday night. So if you can be in Alexandria and you'd like to hear Scott and, get to hang out with him, come to the meeting, and you can hear him at lunch, and then you get to hang out with him at the donor event on Saturday night. The donor event on Saturday is a paid event. He is coming, as a celebrity to help bring people to the event, and it is a paid event. I think it's $50 to get in. All right. Region reports. Okay, let me go to what's new. New business with previous notice. Here we go. We are probably going to have 2 full days. That's unusual. We're probably going to be there till 5 on Sunday. First thing. Well, I don't know whether it'll be the first thing on the agenda. It is on the proposed agenda. Angela may change that. Adoption of strategy for 2022 and 2024. We're going to do goals and strategy, measurable things, using a SWOT analysis. Portions of that may be an executive session, but the vast majority of it will be public. So you can watch a live stream or you can watch it after the fact. And that's it for Saturday. That's the first new business without previous notice, at least so far. Now, on Sunday, new business with previous notice continued. Ken Mulman's going to do a presentation on the CRM background and an update. Mr. Nikala asked for a discussion on earned media outreach, tools, and priorities. Then I have 5 policy manual amendments. Let me see if I can remember what they all are, and maybe I can put those up on screen. I think I do. I want you guys to see these. So let me download this proposed agenda so I don't have to find it again. And let me pull up the policy manual amendments so I can put them on the screen. Let me find where I filed them. Oh, and there is something else I wanted, that's standard, but I wanted to go over with you guys. Okay, I'm going to need to share my screen again. So let me take the chat down again. Sorry, it just takes up a lot of real estate. And let me share my screen. Okay, this is my drive, as you can see. Okay. Policy manual amendments. It'll take a minute for them to come up. First one. Under the harassment and offensive behavior prohibition, which I'm really well aware of, and that one of the things they removed me over because criticizing the bad ethics of the prior LNC was considered harassment, even though I did it all on my personal time. So what I want to add to this, you see the green? I gotta take off Grammarly here. I want to add that doing things that are considered blah, 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 while discharging official duties. So stay away from people's personal social media. All right? And I want to strike the paragraph that says, any behavior, whether verbal or physical, that clearly offends a reasonable person, libertarian or not, must be avoided. Libertarianism is a philosophy of respect for the individual, and it must not be presented as being in harmony with behavior generally regarded as offensive. Culture has changed since this was written, and behavior generally regarded as offensive nowadays is libertarianism itself. This is a terrible provision. It should not be in there anymore. There already is enough rules in here that cover things that most people would think would be covered, like sexual harassment, physical threats, and so on and so forth. Okay, have a good night, Nathan. And I think that's all I want to change on there. Oh, yeah. Also want to strike, as a rule of thumb, if you think it might be offensive, it probably is. No. Because sometimes you have to say things that might not be like that. That's ridiculous. And I want to add in a section 2.016, whistleblower protection. Go figure. Mere criticism, even if harsh, of the policies, decisions, and business practices of the LNC by other members of the LNC shall not be considered harassment or grounds for removal from office for officers and at-large members. Rules of decorum shall apply to all official interactions. Okay? So those are two changes I want to make. I want to make changes to 2.015 and add a new section 2.016. There already is a section 2.016 that I am going to be moving to strike, and I will show you what that is. Here is the section I want to strike. This was added in June, and it's been weaponized, and it's ridiculous. I voted for it in June because, A, I trusted those people. I didn't think it would be weaponized, and I must have been tired because there's ridiculous provisions in here, even if it's not weaponized. All right, this is what I want to delete in full. It's 2 pages long. We're not going to go over all of it. Electronic communications. Address the group. Messages must be addressed to the entire group of subscribers. Side conversations and personal interactions must be taken to one-to-one email. So if on the LNC list somebody said they got a new job, you can't say something personal to that person according to this rule. It's just ridiculously micromanaging the LNC. No personality-based discussion. That's already covered in Roberts. Most of this stuff is already covered in Roberts, where official business has to be in line with decorum. No misrepresentation of another's work. Sometimes misrepresentation is in the eye of the beholder, but again, that's already covered under Roberts. No prejudicial, offensive language, blah, blah, blah. That's already covered under the provision we just read. Same thing within all of this other stuff. And check this out. This is a rule. No flooding, repetition, or cross-posting. So you can get dinged if you repeat yourself, even if you think people misunderstood you. No double posting to other lists. So an LNC member allegedly can't post an LNC discussion on social media. And a message posted to the list can have no other recipients except the list address, and it's 2 CC or BCC lines. So you can't BCC somebody. It's ridiculous. No off-charter material. So if there is something of general interest, you can't post it to the LNC list, even though people have done that since the dawn of time, and it's never been a problem. And if it's a problem, the chair can step in and say, we're not gonna, whatever. Accurate, substantial subject lines. Okay, I mean, talk about nannying. Limit message size. And saying concerns about LNC, and this is funny because this LNC didn't do this when it came to me. It's rules for me, but not for thee. They broke this rule here, by the way. And they broke it with Joshua Smith too. Concerns regarding LNC members shall be reported to the executive committee. They did not do that with me. They went right from 0 to removal. Okay, so that section needs to go. It's 2 pages of nothing burger that's already covered elsewhere. Next one. Opening it up. General delegation of authority. Why is that? Okay. Last term, they canceled all the LNC meetings, and then the party was just being run by executive committee. That's been done not just with this immediately passed LNC, it's been done with other LNCs. It's ridiculous. A whole LNC was elected. You don't want to reduce the LNC down to just the executive committee. The executive committee should just be for things that are specifically says must be approved by the executive committee in the policy manual, such as ballot access, encumbrances, and the like, and not to bypass the entire LNC. So I'd like to add, the executive committee shall exercise all powers of the LNC between LNC meetings when urgency demands a more immediate time frame than when the LNC can next meet. Because we can have an electronic meeting of the LNC within 5 days. The executive committee can meet within 2 days. Sometimes that's necessary. But other than that, you should call a full LNC meeting, because that is who is elected by the delegates. Okay, next one. I think this is the last one. This is the one that's most important to me. Our bylaws don't address this, but our policy manual can. Section 1.01.4, I'd like to add, removal from office. No party officer or at-large member shall be subject to removal from office except for failure to perform the duties of office or gross malfeasance. The process for removing officers and at-large members shall be the trial procedure as outlined in the party's parliamentary authority. The officer or at-large members' membership rights can be suspended by a 2/3 vote while the matter is being investigated if necessary to prevent potential harm to the party. That last sentence is in there because if you have a case like where the treasurer is cooking the books or something to that effect, you don't want to have them still doing everything while it's going through the investigatory committee process required by Roberts. So this is to protect the party. And it is allowed under Roberts to suspend rights temporarily. Now, some people may go, yeah, but the bylaws address this. Yeah, the bylaws do require a trial, but the Judicial Committee decided, to ignore that. So we put it as a special rule of order, which is allowed. This doesn't supersede that the final removal vote will take 2/3. This is because that is giving you the vote threshold. This is giving you the procedure. Okay. This obviously is one that's near and dear to my heart. Now let's go back. Oh, I don't want to do my Filmora. Close that. That's my video editing program. Why do you keep asking me to rate it? All right. I want to go back here. And let me put chat back up. Okay. Now, I want to go back a bit to some of the standard things. Under the Secretary's report, I'll be moving to approve the convention minutes. Requires a 2/3 vote. After the convention minutes are approved, then I, per a prior motion of the LNC, will be appending to the September 4th through 5th, 2021 minutes in which my illegitimate removal was done, that this removal was declared null and void by the 2022 National Convention. Please see those minutes for further details, since those minutes will then be approved. There will also be the expungement ritual, which I will be bringing a hard copy of the January 23rd, 2022 minutes in which the censure of Joshua Smith was conducted, because at the May 29th meeting, that was ordered to be rescinded and expunged from the minutes. So I'll be bringing my black marker. And for those who don't know, no, this isn't sending something into the memory hole. Expungement doesn't mean you black it out. You put a black bracket around it and you say expunged and the date. okay? It's what it means is you're expressing the strongest disapproval of a prior action and rescinding it. It's not as if it never existed. Like my voiding is as if it never existed. The censure of Joshua Smith did exist between January 23rd and May 29th, but it's been rescinded. Okay. That's it that I want. Oh, and what I'm also going to be demoing and going over is I'm going to be keeping one of my campaign promises. Well, actually, I'm keeping two of them this term. And I actually changed my mind on a third one, which I went over in a prior video. And I said, perfectly understandable if people say, well, you know, I'm holding you, like, even though you changed your mind on that, I would never vote for you for another term if you decided to run. That's perfectly fair, because initially that was my position. I've since abandoned my position, and I gave all of my reasons, and I'm not saying I'm rerunning because I don't think about that shit. I'm thinking about doing my job, but I did that in another video. But the two campaign promises I'm keeping this meeting is, one, I have an assistant secretary, unofficial, that will be at this meeting, and we're doing a lot of training together at this meeting. That is Chase. That's been, if someone can in YouTube chat put the link to the LNC list, but if nobody does, Theodore, if you go to lp.org, scroll down to the footer, there is a link down there that says LNC minutes and discussion. If you hit that link, then on the page it takes to you to, there is a link to the email discussion list. Okay. What else was I saying? Oh, so another thing I'm doing during the secretary's report, which is a campaign promise, is I have written a manual for document management within the party, because that's my skill set. I'm a paralegal that works on large document cases, okay? So I wrote a manual on internal document hygiene and management, because the crazy pants thing is, we don't upload our party records. We upload it to the website, but the minutes, but there are other supporting documents and things. They're not stored on the party server. Oh, YouTube blocks and, oh, okay. Well, I told him how he can get it. But are there any mods here? I do have some people, but I don't think any of them are here. I think Julian had to leave, and he's one of my channel mods. And Mike Seebeck is, and he's not here either. So I wrote the manual. And the crazy thing is, I'm not feeling well, as I said. Party records are stored on the secretary's personal computer. If you have a secretary that goes off the rails and runs off, you've just lost a lot of crap. So there's going to be a new policy that they're kept on the party's computer, the party's server, and there's a procedure, standardized filing procedure, standardized document hygiene procedure that I will be launching at this meeting. If you remember, I started doing this and wrote the first version of the manual right before I was allegedly removed, which got voided. But I picked up right where I left off. It's a lot of work. For me to move everything and categorize it properly, we are talking, I'm probably going to put 100 hours into this. Probably more, because I've already put, between writing the manual, but that was mostly last term, though I revised it a little bit. Between writing the manual, oh crap, I probably already have 100 hours into it, but this term. Because I have a lot of records on my computer that I need to move to the party server and put them all in the proper places. All right, so back to the proposed agenda. Let me, 1 second here, let me pull it up. Again, I can't share it because it's not official yet. But I'm basically reading it off to you. But remember, it can change. The items aren't going to change, the order of them may change. Okay, where were we at? We were at my policy manual amendments. Okay. Next, executive session. We're going to go into executive session after lunch on Sunday to approve a new communications director contract. Or not approve it, as the case may be. The consideration will be to approve. The actual vote for approval will take place outside of executive session, however, as our rules require. Next is going to be boardroom and conflict resolution training. This is fantastic. Even though last term, nothing would have saved the last term, but it would have been better if we did this. So Angela is being very proactive and putting us through. And I read through the materials. They are great. Next is elections. I should have put subpoints under this. Angela, if you're listening, I need to do subpoints under this. I'm going to send you version 5 of the proposed agenda. I hope she didn't already issue oh no, she's going to have me put it into PDF. So I just got another email on the LNC list. Let me see what it is. Oh, it's the call for the executive committee meeting. Okay. And next. Okay, let me go back to the agenda. Next item, presentation from Maryland gubernatorial candidate David Lasher. Next thing is motion concerning Bitcoin affiliate links. Then there's a spot reserved for potential motions relating to the New Mexico situation. In case anybody wants to make any motions, there's been none noticed, but we just reserve time for it in case. After that, set, place, and dates of next in-person LNC meeting. I do believe it's going to be in Austin or that area. At least that's the chair's request, because it will be in November, I believe, and our chair will be 7 months pregnant at that time, and she obviously does not want to be, very heavily pregnant and traveling, too far. And she'll be living in Austin at that time. Next, potential candidate support opportunities in the Libertarian Party of Alabama proposal. That hasn't been finalized yet to share. All right, that's a lot. So that is so far what we're doing. There still might be a couple more things added. We are probably going to be there till 5 on Sunday. On Friday night in Virginia, if you can come to this meeting, I would really love to see you. On Friday night, there is a free barbecue being hosted by the Libertarian Party of Virginia. You do have to RSVP for it. That RSVP link is on the article on the main LP website that talks about the Alexandria meeting. So please do that. Oh, I don't feel good. I need another swig of soda. So, everyone, that's it. That's a lot. So, yeah, I'm going to give the chat a few more minutes to see if there are any questions or comments. Hopefully, I've been keeping you all in the loop. If you can, come to the meeting tomorrow. Obviously, I think there should be opportunity for public comment. I don't really need to do a proposed agenda because, it's only one thing. I'll see if Angela wants me to. So there will be, I'm nearly positive there will be opportunity for public comment. If that's not automatic, I will move for it. You know me. But I don't think there'll be any pushback on that. We're not the type of LNC that wants to shut up members or turn off the chat. So, giving it again, just a couple more minutes before I shut this down. While I'm waiting, just to make sure there's no comments, along the bottom is my Patreon. Would truly appreciate it. And you still do have a few minutes if there's any last minute super chats. And Justin is appreciative of us keeping the chat open. Oh, I am super tired. and not feeling well. Hopefully I'll be on my game tomorrow. I came home today and just crashed. I wanted to do this show earlier, but apparently I went right to sleep. And I've got to be up for a little while longer tonight because I got to put out the meeting notice for Monday. And unfortunately, Justin O'Donnell said they won't be there. He has a meet and greet debuting Jeremy Kaufman's new ads about abortion. I might, if I'm feeling up to it, tomorrow night do another one of those Change My Mind shows where I invite people on to talk with me live. I don't know if I'll be up to it because I'm not feeling well, and I'm going to have the New Mexico meeting, which I have a feeling is going to be tiring. And I might want to do a show on what happened, on what we discussed. So I can't promise it, but I am going to be doing those shows regularly on many topics of Change My Mind. People really enjoyed that last time. And another thing I'm hoping to do, which before the last term LNC went insane and the people turned into, not all of them obviously because we do have some returning ones, but you know who I mean, turned into just terrible people. We used to do after meeting like shows. I would invite them on and we would talk, like even people who disagreed and voted on opposite sides. Like Francis Went was on my show. Like it was a great time. So I'm going to see if any LNC members will come on with me the week after the Alexandria meeting to just discuss, particularly if there was something that was, I don't want to say contentious because I don't think this LNC will ever be contentious. Of course, I thought that about the last one, but I know the people on this one. It's a character issue, not an argument issue. But particularly if there was a vote that wasn't really lopsided, you know, with most people sticking together. If there was a vote that was close, I would love to have people on the other side come on my show and talk about why they voted that way. All right. I guess that's it for this evening. Thank you guys, because this was a long one. It was nearly 2 hours. But, you know, I want to keep you up to date. This is something that's been sorely lacking, I think, in our party culture. I hope you have an awesome night. Hopefully I'll feel better tomorrow. And thank you again for all your support. Bye-bye.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because